A controversial issue here at Needham High School is censorship.
I think censorship is limiting what somebody can say or do, typically to protect the rights of others.
Blocking or removal of anything deemed inappropriate.
Prohibiting of certain images or speech that are described as like too obscene for society, or I guess in this case the school.
There has been conflict whether it's simply what students are wearing to school or what is appropriate to be said in the classroom, or we had the incident or regularly have the incident of student videos that are made and trying to make sure they're appropriate, what is and isn't appropriate for the student videos.
In particular, the 2014 pep rally video caused controversy that is widely discussed among current students at Needham High School.
I remember distinctly at pep rally that there was a huge conflict with the video. I had heard amazing things like he'd worked so hard on this video.
The administration said that they couldn't show parts of it because the jokes were inappropriate or like criticizing the administration or something.
There were just some parts that were not in any way appropriate for a school setting that were really, in some cases, pretty offensive or just generally inappropriate. And yet the students who were putting it together wanted to try and get those parts built into the video. And again, we tried to work very closely with them and steer them in a different direction, but that didn't happen.
I believe there was a devil worshipping scene or something like that. They had to completely censor it out, and people knew what it was behind there. But apparently it wasn't appropriate for us to see, even though we knew what it was.
Administration basically said we're not going to support this as a representation of our school that would go out there publicly or be seen by other members of the school. So we're going to ask you to remove these parts or blur different parts. So I believe certain scenes were removed, and I believe also certain parts were blurred so that you couldn't see what was being said or written on something.
They had to show a brief, edited version of the video at the pep rally, and people got really mad. Really mad.
So when the class of 2015 takes away our video.
They only stated that it wasn't suitable until a couple days or a day before the pep rally itself, and that's why so many people were upset, because if their input had been in it throughout, then they could have avoided some of those issues.
From my understanding of it, the administration said there's some questionable things that we want you to take out of the film, and the director said, yes, I will do that, and then he did not do it. And so that really doesn't fall in the realm of censorship. I think that just wasn't working and coordinating and collaborating with the administration on what was supposed to be the end product.
So we had a timeline. Most of the deadlines were met, without an issue, or we were communicating about it. And, we had several meetings throughout the year, some before school, some during, some after, in, leading up to the pep rally. And there was a time when students had to submit, the original kind of draft version of the video, and we viewed it. And it was actually the three assistant principals and principal at the time. And we viewed the video, and then we went back to the director and some of the other student representatives who were involved and said, this and this are great. This is funny that, we like this. This is, kids are going to respond well to it, students and staff. And there are these things that we want to see changed. We were on a strict timeline because other student groups were to be performing. It's also the day before everybody lets out for break for the holiday. And so we want to keep things on schedule as much as possible. And so the video is going to be turned off at a certain point when it went over that time limit within reason.
I know one of the a cappella groups, I think it was the Treble Rebels, were planning on singing a song, and then the day before pep rally, the school administration had been like, you can't sing this song.
We were going to perform the song Rehab by Amy Winehouse, and we weren't informed until the day before that we weren't allowed to perform that song because it referred to alcohol in the song.
I, heard that, and immediately it didn't sit well with me just because I know the song and I know the lyrics, and I also discussed it with some of my colleagues, and we decided that that's not a song, great song, but some really kind of serious, really sad content.
We had to rush and find a new song, and it was a little bit of a hassle, and it would have been nicer to know more in advance.
We just don't want to kind of glorify, alcohol use or substance abuse or anything like that.
I think they were just trying to do what was appropriate for a school environment, but that also weighs the question, what is appropriate for a school environment? And I think you really have to think about the audience and like the kids and think about what we are exposed to every day.
Opinions are mixed on the censorship of the 2014 pep rally video.
I think the administration chose to censor it because certain, I guess, jokes in it just like made them uncomfortable. But the thing is that different administrators and teachers were a part of making the video, and they were all fine with their parts. So I think it's just that like some of it was like borderline, but nothing in the fully released video was like much more drastic than anything that the entire student body was allowed to see. So I didn't really understand the decision that much in general.
I do agree that there needed to be some sort of censorship. I think what's often overlooked is we can have students as young as 13 in the high school, and there are lots of rules and regulations by the federal government or subsets of the government that restrict things to protect youth. Most of the time, censorship and regulation is done to protect certain people or to not promote certain things. So if the parts of that video were related to anything to do with drugs, sex, violence, or those things that we want to make sure that we're having good communication and conversation, education about, and not just shown inappropriately, I think I would support the censorship around those ideas and encourage educational conversation around those.
I think the students can handle that sort of jokes, and the truth of our society is that people make jokes like that, and we're not always going to be in this filtered environment.
I understand why they did it, but I think that definitely it was unfair, and probably a lot of the issues that surrounded it could have been solved with a little bit more communication between students and faculty.
The following year's seniors got the impression that due to what happened the previous year, they were not allowed to make a pep rally video.
I think the fact that we didn't get a video this year was a bit of a bummer to a lot of the students, a lot of the seniors this year, because it's been something we've been watching ever since we were freshmen and imagining what our video was going to be like, what our take on a parody or satire on Needham High School would be, and that was sort of taken away from us without any say really from students.
Like, we weren't the ones that made the video, it was someone else, and we're not the same people. We're not going to make the exact same video.
There's no ban of videos at this point. I don't want to see it that way. The video itself was just never really appropriately placed at the pep rally. It's a senior video by seniors, for seniors, and yet displayed for all 4 grades, which, when we had a chance to kind of step back and really think about what the role and purpose of the pep rally was, it just didn't make sense to have that there.
Basically, it was originally a pep rally video that the seniors did, and it slowly shifted to being mostly about seniors and, inside jokes with seniors and things that the seniors wanted to kind of get excited about or see in action or whatever it might be, or showcase. And I think that's great, and I think the school as a whole thinks those things are okay, but trying to find the appropriate venue for that was what the issue is.
We did have the opportunity to make a sing-along video, which was a video where basically they would play a song like Shake It Off by Taylor Swift or something, and you would have all the teams.
I agree with the change in the format, that if we're going to do a video for pep rally, which I think we should bring back a pep rally video, and we actually tried to do one this year that we were too late in the process to get it done. But the pep rally video is going to be a school-wide celebration video, which that was more of a senior showcase video. And so if you want to do a senior showcase video, we can keep doing that. We're just going to put it in a different venue.
It was hard for us to both see eye to eye on different things because we all had different ideas when it came to this idea of expression.
The students' view of it is seeming very different from our view of it and what it should be. And it would be really challenging to kind of totally change that mindset either way.
The 2014 pep rally video is not the first or last time censorship has been an issue at Needham High School. Students and faculty even disagree on the amount of censorship in this school.
Can't just go around saying whatever you want and offending everybody, but in a lot of cases I think that they go too far to censor what people are expressing.
I think Needham's been a great school for letting students express themselves and say what they want, wear what they want. I think for the most part, this school in particular gives a lot of freedom to the students to do and say what they want.
Most students are going to go through their 4 years here without even thinking about crossing any of those lines. And when a student does, I don't think it should come as a surprise that we're going to step in and address it.
One of the most important things kids need to learn how to do is like release their thoughts. And I think we really don't have enough ways for people to be able to express their feelings and get that acknowledged. People always are hesitant to share their work with me because they're scared it's going to get censored, and they're scared that their message won't be allowed to be what it is for what it is.
As a student, you hear things always. Sometimes I've heard things through teachers asking students to take something out of an essay because it was inappropriate.
My friends and I made a piece for our senior art show, and the art show was at the school, but it was sponsored totally by students, completely run by the students, and we were allowed to put any art we wanted in it. So we made a piece for the show, and it was a traffic light, and we spray painted it, and there were a bunch of stencils, and it was like a very busy looking thing. And one of the stencils was a marijuana leaf, which is it was just a design. It wasn't meant to like portray any opinions or anything. There weren't any words on it. And we covered up the marijuana leaf for the art show because there were going to be a lot of people seeing it, and we agreed that, if administration didn't want everyone seeing it, then it was fine that we would cover it up. And it was fine for the art show. They left it there, but then immediately afterwards it was taken down, and we weren't allowed to leave it up in the library with all of the rest of the art. For the traffic light, we put out Sharpies and stuff and had people draw things, and people drew some kind of vulgar things, but we were monitoring it, and we made sure that all of those were covered up and it was appropriate for everyone to see. But even though there was one piece of paper over the marijuana leaf, they still wouldn't let us put it up. Well, I mean, it was kind of hurtful because we spent so long on it and we worked really hard on it, and they didn't really give us much explanation. They were like, oh, you can't put that up.
I've seen kids that have shirts that reference either bands or something that they're really passionate about, but it may have an alcohol company on the back. And I think that's a really hard thing because what high school is about is trying to express yourself in the best way possible, in the way that you see fit. And when those particular things are taken away from you, then you lose a part of your identity.
There is more concern around how censorship is perceived and how some of our actions are perceived than the reality of what censorship is truly happening. We have a school newspaper that no administrator looks at prior to it going to publication. There's no censorship. There's no even oversight from our standpoint. There are times where we might talk with the advisor or a student about some topics that may raise some concern for people, and that people are great about getting feedback from us, but we don't even look that over. There are other schools that every piece is prior reviewed and approved by the administration. That's a very different environment, and getting much closer to that negative perception and emotion around censorship. That's not how we approach things in any way here. If students' comments or actions or what they're wearing are interfering with the educational environment of others, then we have to intervene. And that's our determination, not the student's determination. So there are times where a student might argue with me as I'm addressing a situation, nobody else was bothered. That's for me to determine as a building leader.
The question now becomes, where do you draw the line between acceptable and excessive censorship?
I don't know that there's a definitive line. It's always changing as our world evolves. I mean, you think at what we allow and permit today might definitely would have been a no-go years ago. At the same time, things were acceptable then that we would say is not acceptable now.
The problem in society and in all societies, it's very difficult to say where that line is drawn. Because what might offend one person might not offend another person. What might be seen as a freedom of speech issue for one person might not be a freedom of speech issue for another person.
When topics and expressions come up that are hateful, that are derogatory, not only is there an opportunity, but we have a responsibility in a way to make sure that doesn't happen.
We're not looking to go after people and say, hey, stop saying that, stop doing that. But if it's offensive, if it's disrupting the educational environment, then not only will we, but we have that obligation. I think out of respect for the entire student body and the staff who are here on a daily basis, we need to make sure that we're doing that.
Although opinions vary on how much censorship is needed and whether or not it is justified, the real issue here is the perception of censorship in the school.
I think anytime that that an adult of any sort, especially when in a position of authority, especially in a school setting, is saying, hey, don't do that, don't say that, I think the immediate response for many students, not all, is I'm being censored. Again, that's where it's taken on that negative connotation, where it really wasn't meant to have such a negative connotation. We're in a position where we're in this building, there are 2,000 people here, and we've got to be aware of the people around us. We can't go around just simply saying any thought that's on our mind, especially if we know, or it could possibly be, that others are going to be offended by it. So there are times where we'll intervene. That I wouldn't say that that's censorship, but we want to make sure that there's a certain level of respect that we're considering as we're interacting with the world around us.
I think when you're younger, you want to express yourself in lots of wide and different ways, and I think sometimes what might be censorship when you're young is just being prudent behavior. Like it's common sense to adults that you wouldn't do something like that or say something like that, and I think that sometimes that's that gray area between the students and the administrators. The administrators are looking to make sure that it's a healthy environment for everyone, and the students understand that, but they also want to express themselves in whatever way possible.
We think about the idea of intent and impact, and sometimes an objective person, such as one of us, can see the potential impact that a student or a group never intended at all. They intended entertainment. They intended get a few laughs. And we believe that and understand that and also see that on one level. And we can see or anticipate an impact based on what we know and based on our experience and based on what we know about students that they don't, or families or the community or whatever. So that sometimes informs our decisions around what we say, what we approve and what we deny or say no to.
And I think you really have to think about the audience and the kids and think about what we are exposed to every day. And there are a lot of things that both our parents know that we are exposed to and the administration knows that we're exposed to, but they don't acknowledge it. And I think that's something that people have to work on when considering what needs to be censored and what does not.
There's always an opportunity to see a different point of view, and often the ideas, more often than not, come from the students. We vet them. And we have to have, I think, some level of input, and if it has to be some level of kind of, oversight of what we're putting out there, because we're stamping it. If it's the NHS Pep Rally, we're stamping it.
Just think we want to make sure that people are being respectful to everybody around us. I mean, that's the basic rule that we have in this building. Be respectful. Treat others with respect. And if that's happening, then you're giving thought already to the shirts that you're wearing, the comments that you're making, how offensive it may be or not be, and you're adjusting your behavior as a result of that. And if you are, then there's never any issue or any concern.
So, how can this school improve the relationship between faculty and students around censorship and help them to compromise on what to do when censorship issues arise?
If they want to censor something, or if they want to put their 2 cents forward, they should definitely hold a meeting first and take what we have to say really seriously. Just make it more clear. I think so many things are ambiguous around here.
It just needs to be frequent meetings, conversations about what the plan is. I think the biggest problem that we've run into with, say, the video is made with no script ever seen, no discussion about what it's going to be, and then we say, oh, here's the video, and it's like, whoa, this isn't okay, this isn't okay. Where if we had that conversation, what are you hoping to do? What does the script look like? And then we can talk about together, okay, well, when you do this part, you have to be aware you can't do anything along these lines, or you have to stay away from these issues. So if you have those conversations early and make plans together or share ideas early on, I think you don't run into problems in the end.
Censorship often is looked at in a negative way, and I think it actually can be a very purposeful, positive thing if we're making sure that the experience of the students and the staff who are walking the building are positive, comfortable experiences and not making people uncomfortable. So in that sense, I think the censorship, to use that word that we're doing, is actually a necessary step and a very positive one. Censorship in the negative sense, that people tend to feel like you're stifling my views and beliefs, I don't think we go after that or try to go that route in any way at all. In fact, I think we often try and avoid it. And I've had lots of conversations with students where I've talked about their rights to be able to communicate in a certain way. Part of that conversation is also that there are drawbacks to that. There are ramifications for it at times. So although there are times where a right is had, there are repercussions that come along with that right. So I think part of it is clarifying kind of what we don't do, which is a pretty broad range of things to interfere with students' rights to expression. But also, I think we could do a better job of being clear about what is not acceptable in a school setting and specifically in this school setting.
I think it's really important to embrace the thoughts that come out of teenagers' minds because I think they're really cool. And I think that we're all really cool and that everybody is so raw and real when they're a teenager.